So last week, as we were where we ended up, if you'll remember, and we did chase some rabbits last week, which we tend to do. But that's okay because everything is learning. Um, and I have always told the people, sometimes we'll go down a rabbit hole. Sometimes we'll come back out. Sometimes we won't. That's okay. All right. It's all about learning, and we learn different ways, and different things come up, and different topics come up. But anyway, where we ended up was that, remember, I read to you, Yeshua breathed into the disciples and said to them, he breathed upon them, he blew on them, and he said, receive the Ruach HaKodesh, receive the Holy Spirit. And I asked you where that came from. Where is that coming from? Genesis chapter 2, that God created Adam with his own hands and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. He breathed, and Adam became a living soul. Now, all of creation, all living things are living souls. Every animal is said to have a nephesh, that is a soul. That's what makes it, has life. That life comes from Hashem, comes from God. And this is one of the reasons why we're to be careful with how we treat animals. So when we're talking about the slaughter of animals, talking about eating kosher, one of the things about kashrut is the gentleness of the slaughter. That you do not stun the animal. You don't race the animal up ramparts. And I drove a semi-truck for several months, and we would get caught in the slaughter. It was called the Slaughterhouse Triangle up in Kansas. And basically it was 3 cities where they had big slaughterhouses of the common meats that you eat, the big name brands that you eat. And so basically one of the loads that we picked up was $1 million worth of the top end meats that we carried out to Los Angeles because they were going to have one of their big movie events or whatever, and we were carrying $1 million worth of meat out for these movie stars to eat. But anyway, that's beside the point. Just something of interest. But the slaughter of animals must be done in a calming way, in a quiet way. If you've seen like artwork of the animals in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple, getting ready, waiting for their slaughter, they had like little bricks with an iron hook to which they would tie the animal, waiting his turn for the sacrifice. And but they would each have their own levy, their own servant, as it were, standing next to them to keep them calm. There wasn't all this. And so when Yeshua goes through and what is this bleating of the sheep? It's all this noise, all this racket and everything, But so the thing was to keep the animal calm. Then the second thing was to slaughter the animal in such a way that death was instantaneous. There's no suffering in it. In fact, the animal loses consciousness within 2 to 3 seconds. The knife is so sharp, and by the way, the butcher must test the knife on himself first, so that it's one of those things like a paper cut where at the fact, you don't even feel it. So the animal never even has an understanding, never even knows. So the artery and the windpipe is all cut at the same time in one instant stroke, and death is instantaneous. There's no need. There's no stunning. There's no shocking. There's no, missed shots, misfire, whatever. Some of the slaughterhouses, they'll use a shotgun, place it on the forehead of the cow, whatever, blow the cow's brains out. But the cow's just like traumatized in doing that. Sometimes it doesn't work right, and there's none of that with this. But this is why, particularly in modern Judaism, in Orthodox Judaism, there's not a lot of hunting that goes on, like bird hunting, like dove hunting, because the death of that animal is not instantaneous. And I know because I've done it. That bird will come flapping down, depending on how you hit it, where you hit it. All of these kinds of things are factored in. He may flop around. Usually that's the way they are. They're flopping around there on the ground, and you have to walk up to them. Then you break their neck. But he's already suffering. Sometimes you don't even find the bird. Sometimes you can't even find it. So the Jewish way, the humane way to do this, what we consider the humane way, is that you capture the bird and then you raise them so that you can slaughter them correctly, painlessly, without suffering. Because that creature has within it a soul, the life given to it from God. And it has a survival instinct within it given from God. And so we're to be careful with how we deal with animals. In fact, in Judaism, you feed your animals first. You take care of your animal first, then you take care of yourself, because the animal is helpless. On Shabbat, on Friday, the day of preparation, you give your animal a double portion, because you're not supposed to feed the animal on Shabbat. Not that the animal is supposed to starve on Shabbat, but you give him a double portion. Just as God gave to Bnei Yisrael a double portion of manna before Shabbat. We don't believe in catch and release. If you're going to catch the animal, or if you're going to catch the fish, you catch it to keep it. You're not playing games. It's not. You don't play games. You don't mess with God's creation. You do not needlessly scare, terrorize an animal, a fish, a bird, whatever, for the sport of it. We do not do things for sport. There's nothing sporting to the animal. The sport is in fallen human nature. And so we don't, if we're going to go fishing, we intend to catch the fish in order to use the fish for food or for our needs, to supply our needs. All animals, whether they're clean or unclean. The whole purpose of messing with them is to utilize to be utilized in our life, to help us to elevate, to live. But never simply for the sport, for the fun of it, for whatever. And so, even the animal has life. But to none of the animal life did God breathe into their nostrils. He simply brought them to life. Where we ended up is speaking about how God was face to face with Adam. It's like a kiss. It was as he were giving Adam mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. That close, that kind of a relationship. I took Red Cross. I was a certified, what do you call it? Not a paramedic, just a resuscitator, whatever. We learned how to use the machines and all that kind of stuff. Because when I worked at the school, because they teach that stuff in health class now, and so I was the backup for the teacher, and also because they had the electric devices then placed around the school, somebody has to know how to use them, and so the PE coach and I went to Valley Baptist Hospital over here and took the Red Cross training from Valley Baptist. and learned how to do all those things. One of the things that they did was they gave us a little plastic, almost like a plastic, like a baggie, but it has a hole in it, and you keep that in your wallet. And the purpose of that is so that when it is necessary for you to give mouth to mouth, you're not literally mouth to mouth. There's that barrier between. Okay, and basically, so you're not exchanging whatever. And if you're sick, you're not giving them sick. If they're sick, they're not giving you the sickness. Those kinds of things. But there are times when there's no time to do that. You simply have to do what you have to do. And there have been times where people have given other people, even unknown to them, and even not in the nicest conditions and states or whatever, have taken it upon themselves to try to restore life to that person by giving them mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. What a love for humanity one has to have within their heart to be willing to take that risk upon themselves. This is how much God loves mankind, that he literally gives to Adam mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. It's not because it didn't happen before. He wasn't breathing before. But he resuscitates him. He breathes into him the breath of life. And by all of this, by the almost human-like touch of creating, of modeling Adam out of the clay with his own hands, and then breathing into his nostrils face to face the breath of life. This is the difference between humanity and animals. Animals are beneath the human level. All of these people, and the human rights, the animal rights activists and everything, all those kinds of things. It's fine so far. But you do not elevate the animal to the point of the human. The human is above the animal. Nor do you say that it is man's fault, that man should disappear off of the earth so that humanity, or so that the animal kingdom can survive. And there are people who believe that. And so that is not what God has called. The animal kingdom was put here for the benefit. Everything is put here for the benefit of mankind. And mankind is the zenith, the apex of the creation. All of this is for you. The entire universe. When you look out at the stars and the planets at night, when you look at the constellations, when you see the new moon rising, when you see the full moon, all of these things, when you see the glory of a beautiful cloudless day, when you hear the shaking and the rumbling of the thunder, and you see the lightning flash, all of this, when you see the greenery, you smell the flowers. I love the smell at this time of year of fresh cut clover. Nothing like that spice, like the spice of that smell. All of this is for your benefit. That's Malchut. The whole purpose of this is you. God went to all, if you would, went to all this trouble for you. This is for you. And so this is what it means, B'Tselem Elohim. That you are made in the image of God. Salam, the image, the likeness. You are like God in aspects. You're not God. You will never be God. He is always God, and you are always human. But you have aspects that are like Him. These aspects are your emotions, your ability to think not instinctually, but to reason. You see, animals don't reason. Now, they can reason like, I gave my sister a little Chihuahua kind of dog. I think it's a mixed Chihuahua Terrier kind of dog. And she knows that when the back door is locked, she has reasoned out that you run around to the front. There's 2 doors. But it's still instinctual. She's not able to have a psychological thinking process like you have. She's not able to think out her emotions. She just knows that they are there. She's not able to think out her instincts like you do. She does not sit there and ask herself, why do I do that? You do that, right? You do something and you say, now why did I do that? Why did I say that? Right? Your dog doesn't do that. Your dog doesn't sit there and say, why did I bite him? Now I feel all bad because I bit him. The only reason why the dog feels bad is because you swatted him after he bit you. It's all instinct. You have thinking, you have reasoning. That animal does not have. Considering that your brain takes up the most weight of all organs in your body. That's how dense and massive your brain is. Have you ever seen the brain of a fish or a bird? It's made up of like 3 cells. And that cell is eat, swim, procreate. Eat, swim, procreate. Eat, swim, procreate. That's all that fish thinks about. It can't even distinguish between fake food and real food. That's the bait on the hook. It sees by instinct. It goes. Even the brain of a deer is only the size of your fist. All it does is it controls the physical instinct of that animal. Contraction and release of muscles so it can run, so it can eat. It's not sitting there thinking about the problem that her son is having. What? Exactly. Only you are created this way. Saying, this is how much God loves you. All of this is for you. He went to all of this trouble for you. As I have said before when I was teaching on this on the series on creation. It is as a husband, a groom. As Yeshua even talked about the story, who's going to get married, and so he goes to his father's house and builds a house for his bride to be. It's not until everything in that house is prepared that the groom then goes and takes his wife and brings her home. It's only upon the approval of the father who inspects the house to make sure it's appropriate. That's Jewish philosophy. Well, the law first mentioned, he set the example. How? He created everything first. This is the house for the new bride, the universe. This is our home. This is going to be our home. And he always steps back, and God saw that it was very good. I've taught you why does throughout all of that first up until Moshe, even up until Abraham, he is only known to them as Elohim, the judging God. In the beginning, Vreshit bara Elohim, the judging God. Elohim saw that it was good, or saw that it was very good, because he steps back and he judges his creation to make sure everything is proper and appropriate for you. He's making sure that this environment is a good place for you to be. So all of this is for you. When he breathed into Adam the breath of life, he's breathing in, he breathes into him all of these sefirot, because this is what is in him. The attributes. This is what is in God. And he breathes these attributes into. So we spoke last week. Every human being contains this. This is your DNA. Your spiritual DNA. Every human being has all of this. The problem is this, and it was through this that Adam and Chava were living. It was through this particularly that Adam, this was his singularity of purpose. To fulfill all of this for the sake of Keter, for the sake of the throne, the crown. He had one purpose. And that one purpose was to be pleasing to God. So that when God spoke and said, this is what I want you to do, this is what I don't want you to do. And there was only one thing that God told him, I don't want you to do. I don't want you, notice how it comes, as Cito was speaking today. The first thing is about food. Adam is the father of all mankind. Eating kosher only for the Jewish people. He said, I don't want you to eat this fruit. As Cito was teaching this morning, we talked about it last week. Remember, we talked about how the nefesh bechama, the animal instinct, the flesh in you, is like the spoiled kid in a grocery store. The checkout line, that kid in front of you. Sometimes that kid with you, who's stomping their feet and yelling and screaming, throwing themselves on the floor. I want. That's your flesh. How many of you have heard someone say something to the effect of, or perhaps you have said it yourself, to the effect of, well, I have a circumcised heart. I don't need to be circumcised in the flesh because I have a circumcised heart. Do you? What is a circumcision? What does that mean? What is this strange code that these people speak? Now, it is a valuable, it is a truthful thing. It is a valuable thing. I'm not saying that there is not such a thing as a circumcised heart. The Tanakh speaks about it. Rav Shaul speaks about it. But what is it? What does it mean? What is circumcision to begin with? The circumcision is the cutting of the flesh. Basically, it's what Rav Shaul is describing when he says that the old nature, the old man, is to be put to death. You're cutting off the excess of the most sensitive member of the male body. Basically saying, you're not going to control me. That's what it is. You cannot be circumcised in the heart and your flesh is still controlling you. That's not circumcision of the heart. The circumcision of the flesh is the outward action of the inward process. This is always the way it is. That's what Judaism is. So that when we put on tefillin, the outward action does nothing There's nothing in wrapping the tefillin around your arm. It's what it represents and what it is putting in your heart and your mind. When you wrap the tefillin around your arm, you're reminding yourself, Torah is going to control all of my actions today. When you wrap it on your head, when you put it upon your head and you bind it to your head, you are declaring and reminding yourself, Torah is going to control all my thought process today. Everything is going to be filtered through Torah. That's what circumcision is. It's a reminder to you that everything is to be processed through Torah. That means that one who is circumcised of the heart, and remember through Jeremiah, that he's going to give, by the way, it's the word Livi Chadashi. I'm going to give you a new heart, literally a renewed heart, like the Brit Chadashah, like the Rosh Chodesh, a new moon, new renewed moon. He's going to renew your heart. He's going to take out the hardness, the stoniness of your heart, so that he may inscribe upon it. What? Torah. So when a person says that they are circumcised in the heart, are they? Because circumcision of the heart means that you are being controlled. Your entire life is being controlled, inside and out, by Torah. Rav Shaul tells us that the fruit of the spirits are peace and joy and love, mercy, kindness, and he goes through the list of them, right? And he says, against such there is no law. And the Christian will say, you see, there's no law. I'm telling you the truth. That's what they say. They say, you see, it says no law. That's all they look at. No, that's not what it says. It says, if you are doing, by the way, he's going through the Sefirot. He's listing the Sefirot. Did you know that in the prayer we call the Lord's Prayer? Avinu Shebshemayim Yikadesh Shimcha. You know he goes through the Sefirot? Do you know that the Lord's Prayer is Jewish? Demonstrably. It is Jewish. And it is the tree of life. But when Rav Shaul says, against such there is no law, he's not saying that there is no law. What he's saying about is, if you're doing these things, you don't have to worry about the law because you're within the law. You see, when I'm going down the interstate, and there's a sign there that says 70 mph, speed limit 70. If I'm going 65, I don't have to worry about anything because there is no law. You understand what I'm saying? That's what Paul is saying. There is no law if you're within the law. In other words, I don't have to be driving. Some people are in such a habit that they're going 65 in a 70 and they see a police officer and they still put on their brakes and they slow down to 40. No, there's no need to be afraid. If you're under, if you're beneath, if you are at the speed limit or beneath, you have nothing to worry about. So I see all these, I'm driving down the interstate and I've got somewhere to be, and I see all these cars backed up behind a DPS trooper. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Come on, just do the speed limit. You don't have anything to worry about. And I will pass them all. I try to pass them all. And they're all like, oh, look, look, look. there goes our rabbit, you know. And then they'll all kind of get behind me. That it's like that, like I was telling you last week, the penguins that they push in, you know, let's see who gets pulled over. Well, if I keep it there underneath, and you know the DPS is going slow, and you know he's going slow on purpose, you know he's out there fishing. So all I have to do is just keep it under the speed limit, and I'm within the law. Then I don't have to worry about the law. But if I'm going 80 and a 70, I'm always looking over my shoulder. Always. Always looking ahead. Do you see him? Do you see him? Do you see him? I used to be a big-time speeder. I used to be a big-time speeder. By the way, you know what stopped me from speeding? Torah. Torah stopped me from speeding. Why? Because Torah teaches that we are to be obedient to the laws of men so long as they do not affect the laws of God. And those laws are there for a purpose. I used to have the whole thing. I used to have the radar on my dashboard. We were on our way up to Wyoming. I got busted. I'm not kidding you. We were traveling up. I had to be up in Wyoming within 24 hours. From here to Wyoming, 24 hours. And I got stopped 3 times. By different entities. The last time I got stopped was in Colorado. And that officer pulled a dirty trick on me. Dirty trick. Because the speed limit was 70 and we were going 80. And I had my radar detector on. But if he doesn't have his radar on, then the radar detector doesn't detect the radar. And he was down in a gully. I was on the other side going 80, and I had my radar detector on. He did not turn on his radar until I got to the top of the hill and was coming down the other side. Boom! Busted. He pulled me over. If I'm going a safe speed, I don't need a radar detector. Because it doesn't matter what radar he's shooting at. It doesn't matter. I'm within the law. If you are within the Sefirot of God, and Yaakov, James, and Yochanan, John, both agree with Rav Shaul's assessment here. It's not that the law does not apply. It's that you're within the law. This is the law. Therefore, if you are observing this, you're observing the law. People say, "Well, I'm observing the law of the New Testament," which is what? Well, to love God with all your heart, to love your neighbor as yourself. Excuse me, that's Torah. That's Torah. All of Torah is divided into those 2 portions. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's Torah. Yeshua even said, that's Torah. The greatest law of Torah is to love God with all your heart. The second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. Upon this hangs all the Torah and the prophets. The 10 Commandments are divided into these 2. The first 5, how to love God. The second 5, how to love your neighbor. And all of Torah is divided into these 2 divisions. So all of this was put within mankind. What happened? Well, when man fell, all of them got switched off. Everything went dark. It's like in those movies, you know, when the power goes off, everything goes down. And you hear someone, or you're in a dark factory and you hear someone, and things are slowly coming back to light. So when man fell, all the switches got turned off. Here's the thing. The reason why you're here today, and those who are listening online, the reason why you're involved in this is because somebody came and switched those switches back on in you. Someone, you either listened to them on television, on radio, online, you attended a service or something. Somehow, somebody switched that switch, flipped that switch back on in you. And how many of you wondered what your purpose in life is? Your purpose in life is this, and it's very simple. To start switching these switches on in other people. It is said that Adam, by Chazal, it is said that Adam and Chava were dressed in light. When they fell, the light shattered into billions of pieces like glass, into sparks. And every human being has a spark of the divine. We all got one. The problem is, it's like charcoal. It's like wood on a fire. That wood burns at night when you go to bed. My wife grew up in a house where they burned wood for heat. And we lived there for a while. And at night, you damper the wood. That is, you keep up the ash around it. You cover it over so that the fire does not completely die out. You see, it has a blanket on it, and that blanket keeps the coal going. So that in the morning, when it's 20 degrees and snowing outside, inside the house it's 30, you get out of bed. You don't want to get out of bed. You get out of bed because somebody's got to light the fire. But if you've done it right, the fire does not need to be relit. It just needs to be released. It's still burning. So you put the twigs and the paper and all in. You move away the ashes and you find that little burning coal, that ember that's left. And you put paper on it and you put little twigs on it and you blow on it. And that ember begins to glow hot and hot and hot until soon the paper and the twigs catch fire. Then you start putting, and before you know it, you have and before you know it, you're opening the doors and windows. Who turned that fire on? It's too hot in here. Your purpose in life is to blow on the ember of the person, the people around you. God brings them into your life for this very purpose. And you would be amazed at how many you miss. You give them this. You ever give somebody this? Like you didn't see. Like you didn't see. When I'm talking to you, understand I'm talking to me. God has put that person in your path so that you can flip on the switches. You're going to hear this a lot in the coming weeks and months. It's not about you. Life is not about you. Get over yourself. Get over it. If you would release that, you'd release a lot of junk and trash in Because it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about this. It's about receiving the energy from above, that I might be a powerhouse to flip on the switches of godliness in the people around me. The other night I was driving home. Been driving all day. Very tired. Ready to go home. I was going down Grimes, but out all the way to Rio Hondo, the airport road. And as I was driving along, I saw a dim shadow there where the stop sign is. And as I got closer, I could see like it looked like a man walking around the car. No lights, no nothing. As I got very close in, I could see that his hood was open. There were like 2 or 3 cars in front of me. He's parked dead in the lane at the stop sign. Traffic coming both ways the other direction, 55, 60 miles an hour. He has no lights on, nothing. The only evidence that something is wrong is that he's walking around and his hood is popped. And it's dark and you can't even see it until you drive up on it. And I saw those cars ahead of me pull into the next lane. Look both ways. Clear. Next car. Look both ways. Clear. Well, this poor guy just wants to get home. So I pulled up on the other side of him. First I parked behind him. I turned my flashers on so nobody would hit him. I said, "Are you having problems?" He says, "Duh." No, he didn't say that. I said, "What's the matter?" And he says, "I don't know. My battery just died. It is completely dead." I said, "Well, I've got jumper cables. Can I jump you off?" He said, "If you would." So I pulled around to the other side of him, got out my jumper cables, tried to jump, wouldn't he? It would just one time. The lights would come on real bright, real bright. Nothing. Dead. So I'm thinking, you know, because I've been in that place. I've been there more times than once when I was young. Because we had old cars. Barely ran. I've been stranded out in the country. And back then we didn't have cell phones. You walked the 3 or 4 miles to find help. I said, "Where do you live? Where are you going?" He said, "Just here into town, Rio Hondo." I said, "Okay, I've got pole rope, tow rope." I said, "If you want, I'll tow you in." He says, "Well, that'd be great, but this car, I don't know how it works." He says, "But if the battery's not working, if you can't turn it on, it won't get into any gear. It's an electronic gear shifter." And I said, I don't know how to help you, man." I said, I don't know what to do. Just as those words were coming out of my mouth, here comes a tow truck around the corner and stops. Boom. "You having trouble?" "Duh." "No, we thought we'd sit here and have a beer, chat about old times." No. I said, yeah, his car broke down. I said, I was going to tow him, but it's stuck in park, and without the electric power, there's no way to get it out of park. I said, how much would it cost? Because it was an old car, and it was full of tools, and I mean, you know the kind. And he's in his T-shirt and jeans, and he's got grease all, and he's a working man trying to get home. And I said, how much would it cost? I'll pay you. Take him home. Because since I was out here for a ride, and I'm just on my way home, if I can help this guy, I'll help him. That's what your life is about. You see, I could have been like the other cars in front of me. Just look both ways and keep going. But as I was wrapping up my jumper cables, he's standing there next to me. I said, sir, God always sends his angels. And he said, yes, sir. I see that tonight. If I had not stopped, who knows? I told you a couple of weeks ago what a fantastic Friday I had driving. $200 in one day, one afternoon. That wasn't even a day. It's like 5 hours worth of driving. Yesterday, I could not get a ride to save my life. In 3 hours, I had made $3. The very first ride, the very first call, I'm sitting back there, getting ready for Kabbalah Shabbat, and my phone dings. This person needs a ride. They're at McDonald's. Accept. I have the choice to accept or not accept. I accepted. Go get out in the car, drive around the block, go down to Austin Street, drive down to 77. I get to 77, my phone rings, it's California, it's Lyft services. Basically, if you're my passenger and you need to get a hold of me, you can call me through Lyft so that they don't get my number, I don't get their number. So I answer the phone. I said, what? I said, is your mommy there? I said, okay, and then they hung up. So I pull into McDonald's parking lot, and I push the arrive, and it sends a signal to them that I'm there waiting for them. Except when I push it, the app says, why are you this far away? Do you want to move closer? What's the problem? You know, something to those orders. What is the situation? What's the problem? Why are you not where you're supposed to be? I'm right where I'm supposed to be. The app crashes and it comes back up, and I push arrive again and it says the same thing, and I push arrive again and it says the same thing, and finally the whole thing just crashes and it comes back up and the ride's gone. The only problem is that by now the gentleman who's needing the ride is already sitting in my car. And what has apparently happened is his girlfriend arranged the ride. He does not have the app himself. His girlfriend arranged the ride. And the baby got a hold of the phone and deleted the ride. So this guy is desperately trying to get a hold of his girlfriend. She won't answer the phone. She doesn't respond to texts. The baby's got the phone. While we're sitting there and I'm trying to figure out what to do, he gets a phone call from the TSD police department that he needs to be in their station immediately. And he explains, I'm sitting there and I'm working, and he explains that he's trying, but he's having problems with the ride, and he could be there in 5 minutes, but it looks like he's going to have to walk now, and he doesn't know when he's going to get there, and I can hear the voice on the other end saying, you need to be here now. And he let out a stream of not good words and says, this is the way my bleak, bleak, bleak day is going. And I said, son, where do you need to go? He said, I need to go to the police department at PSTC. I said, son, I'll take you there. On me. Don't worry about it. I'll get you there. And so I drove him there. Without cost. Without charge. He's already having a bad day. My mission from God. God always sends his angels. My mission from God was to just make his day a little better. Even though I was having a bad day. Make his day a little better and a little brighter. Why? It's not about me. It's about him and them. Now, honestly, I'm not trying to make myself like a saint. I have my days and my moments too. I had the times where I blow up and I wish I ask myself, why did you do that? Why did you say that? Why were you that way? I have those moments. But I'm not going to tell you about those. I'm just going to tell you the good stuff because I want to keep my halo bright and shiny. No. I understand. I'm a living human being as well. What I'm doing is I want you to understand from my personal experience, this is the mission. Mm-hmm. We don't always succeed. But when you fall down, don't stay down. Get back up again and do it again. Try again. I don't know if I'll ever see that young man again. But he will never forget that long-haired, bearded old man who gave him a free ride instead of charging him. Or instead of just leaving him there. I'll never forget that ride. My job is to flip on switches in you. And as God flips on the switch in me, my job is to turn around and show you how to flip on that switch in you. You want purpose in your life? God will give you purpose like you've never known before. Because it's not about me. It's about him and you. And if I can just get myself out of the way. If I could just get this flesh out of the way, my soul rises together. Because your soul never fell. It was the flesh that fell. The soul is pure and perfect as it was the day God gave it. But this body is of death and sin and disobedience. So that they are constantly warring within each other. But if I can give strength, if I can feed the soul, then it can outpower the flesh. Put the flesh in its place. Is the law, is Torah chain and bondage? Yes. To the flesh. It says you cannot commit sexual immorality. It says you cannot commit idolatry. You cannot be proud. You cannot be selfish. You need to be careful what you eat. You need to be careful how you drink. You need to be careful. You need to make sure it is a chain to the flesh, but not to the soul. It releases the soul to raise to the heights of the crown of the throne of God. That's why when you do a mitzvah, you feel good about yourself. And the flesh says, that felt good. I'd like a little more of that. Can I have a piece of bacon, please? This is your purpose in life. It explains it all. The thing is, how do we get from here to there? It's a step-by-step process. It does not say that the angels were gliding up the ladder in Jacob's dream. It says they were climbing. And I'm going to tell you that in some of these steps, it's more like a clawing up with the weight of everything trying to pull you back down. And while you're climbing up that slick face of that wall, the enemy's over there shooting his arrows at you, throwing darts at you. And you're trying to hang on for all your breath so that you can achieve the next step, so that you might draw closer to Hashem. It's going to feel at times like everybody, everything, including yourself, is against you in this climb. But when you get to the top, it's worth it all. You want to know how? We were talking earlier. Yitzhak was willing to lose his life. Not for the sake of Abraham, for the sake of God. How was he so willing to lay down his life without a struggle? He's 30 years old. How is he so willing to lay down his life without a struggle? He could have beat up his 99-year-old father, or 100, whatever, 15-year-old father like that. How is it that Nachdimon was willing to lose everything? We spoke last night. Willing to lose everything. At first, no. He was fearful too. He met with Yeshua secretly. He was the Bill Gates of his time, but he died a pauper. He did not even have his own burial clothes. His friend Gamliel clothed him according to Talmud Sanhedrin. His own friend Gamliel clothed him in his own burial clothes and buried him on his own property, because Nachdimon was absolutely ruined, because the Talmud says he fell in with a nefarious group of men named Peter, James, John, Mark, Andrew. Nefarious. Because he did what Barnabas did, as was their custom. They gave everything they had to the apostles, to the emissaries, to the leaders, to distribute among the poor and the widows among them, so that everyone would live without need. But you see, Nachdimon lost more than that. He lost all of his titles because he was a judge of the Supreme Court of Jerusalem. And he sat on the Sanhedrin because he became known as a follower of Yeshua. He lost it all. And he died a pauper. How do these people do that? They lose themselves in loving God and loving and helping others, because they know that God has a special place for them in Olam Haba, the world to come. Cito, would you close in prayer?